In a great big wood, in a great big tree, there's the nicest little house that could possibly be. There's a tiny little knocker on the tiny little door, and a tiny little carpet on the tiny little floor. There's a tiny little table, and a tiny little bed, and a tiny little pillow for a tiny weenie head. A tiny little blanket, and a tiny little sheet, and a tiny water bottle hop for tiny little feet. A tiny little eiderdown, a tiny little chair, and a tiny little kettle for the owner. When he's there, in a tiny little larder, there's a tiny thermos bottle for a tiny little greedy man who knows the way to pottle, ... There's a tiny little peg for a tiny little hat, and a tiny little dog, and a tiny cat. If you've got a little house and you keep it spick and span, perhaps there'll come to live in it a tiny little man. You may not ever see him, he is extremely shy, but if you find a crumpled sheet, or pins upon the window seat, or see the marks of tiny feet, you'll know the reason why. Please like the video and subscribe the channel. Thank you so much.